Welcome to Talks with Tracy, with certified hypnotherapist, life coach, and licensed mental health professional, Tracy Claremont. Tracy will share her healing journey and explore the many meaningful alternative healing methods in our world today that will support you in doing your own deepest emotional healing. So please welcome the host of Talks with Tracy, Tracy Claremont. Let the suffering end and the healing begin.
Hello and welcome to Talks with Tracy. I'm your host, Tracy Claremont, coming to you live on the Bold, Brave television network. Thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate every single one of you who takes the time to listen to the show. And of course, thank you to Bold, Brave television network for having me. So I realized as I was preparing for the show today that I'm kind of on a quest to find tools that can be used for getting unstuck, getting through that past that unstuck feeling in our lives. You know, I talked last week about how people often come to me feeling like they're stuck in just like circular patterns in their lives, like they are going nowhere, like they have no purpose and they have no direction in their lives. And that's a really hard feeling to sit with. You know, it's a really miserable feeling to have. So, you know, it just doesn't have to be that way. So since the beginning of the new year, I think this is a great time. A beginning of a new year is a great time, an excellent time to really talk about how we can get unstuck. You know, with every new day comes a new chance to live a life of fulfillment. And I truly believe that life is not meant for suffering. Now, I know that we are conditioned in our society to kind of believe that life is about suffering. I mean, from the time we're born, we start to rack up experiences about what life has to hold for us. And we're often given message, you know, like, well, that's life, you know, it sucks. That kind of attitude and belief that life isn't meant to be enjoyed. Well, uh, regardless of all that conditioning. Oh, and even when we do want to enjoy life and we're like, okay, I'm gonna do what I want and you know, I'm gonna focus on my own desires and doing things that make me happy. What happens then? Oftentimes we get pushback from people in our society that and we're called selfish, that, you know, we're overly focused on ourselves and we can't be that way. Well, you know, all of that is just a bunch of lies. It's not true. Life is really meant, and I truly believe this, to be fulfilling and enjoyed and meaningful. Now, I will say the Tracy 20 some years ago didn't have that understanding yet, perspective. I had to do a lot of learning and a lot of healing to get to this place where I now understand that life is meant to be enjoyed and it has purpose and it is meaningful. So, but here I am, and that's what I'm. I'm just really focused on encouraging other people to believe as well. All right. So, what are some tools that we can use in our lives to feel fulfilled and that our lives are meaningful? Well, I have an amazing returning guest today who has agreed to share her perspectives on this, and she's really great at sharing her own personal experiences, which I love. And she's also really great at her craft, which is astrology. So Heather Rowan Robbins is with me again today. I'm so excited to have her back. She is an amazing and beautiful person, such a beautiful soul. She's been really helpful to me in my own personal growth journey. She's provided guidance to me that has been so meaningful. She is an incredibly gifted choice-based astrologer, a spiritual counselor, a ceremonialist, and author. She is the creator of the Star Codes Astro Oracle deck, and she has a new book out that guides people like you and me in understanding the universe. So helpful. She's quite spectacular. So please join me in welcoming the amazing and beautiful Heather Rowan Robbins to the show.
Hello. What a wonderful
Hi.
introduction. Thank you.
Oh, you are so welcome. I mean, every single word of it. You were just amazing. And you've been so helpful to me. Um, I've really been thinking about tools in our toolbox. And when you say you're a choice-based astrologer, I kind of feel like that fits into the toolbox, choice-based. Can
Exactly.
you explain a little bit what you mean by choice-based
Sure.
astrologer?
And I want to come back to some of your wonderful introduction also. I said my feeling is we're here to evolve, but sometimes
Mm.
if it's like climbing a mountain, if you go too steep, you'll fall off. So you want to pace yourself,
Mm.
that we're here to evolve. And joy and enjoyment and filling our wells was part of what we need to sustain us on our journey. So
Mm.
instead of feeling guilty about moments of joy, we can think, the universe, we're filling up our wells and we may need to pass that on the next minute or need that to learn from our life. And so that
Mhm.
it's a gift and it's there an important part of our process. And what I mean
Why do
by
you
choice,
think, can
Mhm.
I ask you a question before you
Absolutely.
move on? Why do you, why do you think we're conditioned for the opposite in
It's a
our
good question.
society?
I think one, life is changing, the world is changing, but there
Okay.
were it I'm not quite sure because I think more of that has to do with some spiritual belief systems, and I do not think the indigenous people have that approach to uh,
Mm-hmm.
that joy is bad, but that
Mm-hmm.
life, to work with who you are and what the universe presents to you, how do you make the most of this is a natural way of being.
Mm.
But I think that there was a change in not the early forms of Christianity, but later on that the process of the pain and suffering, there was so much pain and suffering in the world that if we cause ourselves pain and suffering, we're in control of it. And maybe that's what the
Mm.
universe wants from us. And I don't think it is. I think
Mm-hmm.
there's plenty of suffering out there. We don't need to go looking for it. If we
Right.
feel we're feeling guilty because life is too easy, go find someone to help. But I think in general that it's there's enough flow back that being in alignment, and I think of, one of the things that brings us joy is being in alignment with
Mm.
who we are and what we've got to work with. And this is never to underestimate the challenges somebody else is going through. And I want to
Mm-hmm.
make that an important part of, that I want to say that we have to be very humble about other people's paths
Mm.
because we don't know. They may have contracted before they came into this life saying, could I burn through thousands of years in a short period of time? And what, like life going one after the other, is not a punishment, which is often how it's seen by people who want to remove themselves from their pain, and more like the universe has faith in them. They are strong enough to go through this, to burn through this, to be helpful even under these circumstances. And so I think, again,
Mm. Right.
it's with great humility we look at somebody else's path.
Yes, thank you for that because I truly would never hope to minimize anybody else's struggles in there and challenges that they're in this lifetime with, so I really appreciate that reminder that we're not just like shooting out rainbows and unicorns here. We're not trying to do that. And when I reference myself 20 some years ago,
Yeah, you're
you
in line.
know
Mm.
I I definitely wouldn't have, if somebody would have maybe said, "Hey, you just have to, enjoy life. You're looking at it too negatively. You just need to enjoy." When I was stuck in a lot of trauma, then I wouldn't have received that well. So I
No,
appreciate I appreciate that, reminder to be respectful and humble around other people's struggles. I like that.
And what I see with choice-based astrology is, you know, we always have choice about how we live it out. Every symbol, every sign, every place in our chart has 180 degrees of expression. It has a challenge, a practical side, and a gift. And, that's what my book Star Codes focuses on, is the continuum for each sign, each aspect, each placement. And that
Mhm.
the cure for the negative aspect is often a positive aspect of the same thing. Um,
Mm.
if you I have a client going through some heavy Pluto transits and just found out they have cancer,
Oh.
advanced. And I,
Mm.
can we make light of that? No. But giving it purpose, it's not to ever say, oh, you're having that because you need to do these things in your life. But you
Mhm.
can say, how can you use that? It is trauma.
Mhm.
You're doing this. This is a journey. We love you. We don't know if your journey is going to take you into life or death. But how can you use this for your own evolution, for your own understanding, for your soul's progress? Not, um, what did you do to make this happen? Or how can it's bad.
Mhm.
How do you get out of it? But how do you use what you're going through? Uh, and it's, it fits the Pluto transits, it fits the heavy stuff that her chart's saying, dive in and do the deep work, whatever that is to you, for you at the time. And I think that's
Wow.
comes back to, I always, and I've mentioned this before, what I think of is new age fascism. When we tell people, oh, you've got breast cancer because, and we don't know. That's not for our view. That is a big cosmic view of many lifetimes and of beyond our understanding. That's
Mm.
what I see people use to kind of push other people's pain away
Mm.
rather than empathize with them. And but we can't take their pain away from them, but we can walk with them. And
Mm.
that sense of being walked not alone in our pain, whatever that is, whatever our challenge is.
Mm.
But
Mhm.
with the chart, we see a map of we see it from a person from the inside out. We're like, what are your characteristics? What are your gifts? What did you come in understanding? What are your steep learning curves this lifetime? And if your life is in alignment with who you are, it will be, a great joy. You can see people love their work when their work fits their disposition.
Mhm.
If your family has told you you should always go do this, and you went and you studied that, and you've been doing that, usually around in your late 20s, you go like, I hate this. Get me out of here. I know I'm successful, but this was not my choice. This does not fit my disposition. I really want to go be a
Mhm.
circus clown, or I really want to, you know, travel to third world countries and help them. That being in alignment with what success itself isn't enough unless and you'll see that the charts that are focused on material possessions may temporarily feel like, oh, I'm making a lot of money, but you often feel like we're seeing playing out in politics these days, that that's not enough. There's always hungry for something more because it doesn't
Mhm.
really scratch the itch of worth and
Mm.
purpose inside their soul, and they're not looking anywhere else, so
Mhm.
that's they're gonna keep looking for that. I think of that as
Mhm.
the concept of addiction is looking in the wrong place for the answer. Are you addicted
Mm.
to your work? Are you addicted to money? Are you addicted to a drug? Are you addicted to alcohol? Is often signs of people that are really hungry for spiritual purpose, and they're not looking there, so they're looking to it for some outside source, and that will never be enough, and that's why they're gonna need more and more and more of
Mhm.
that because they're trying to fill that hole. If
Right,
they are
instead of looking inward.
right, and saying, "What am I
Mhm.
really hungry for?"
Mhm.
Um, when your addiction is your work and you work like crazy, you still haven't dealt with what you need what's really gonna satisfy you. but you're living a healthy life in the process, maybe. But I would
Mm.
say that looking at what I see choice-based astrology is to helping us have a map that gives us choice, that we can choose. Do we want to live it out, our tough Mars aspects by getting more accident prone and argumentative, or finally having the bravery to explore something new? Usually, people don't feel stuck unless they're getting ready for a shift.
Mm.
If you're content, there's a role for soul contentment. We were talking about, and that's why, again, don't not judging another person's path. I remember one client who was doing some past life regression. This was years ago, and it just seemed like they were kind of going nowhere, and they were a little curious, but their life was just okay, and it was just okay, and everybody looks like you could do so much more, but they're like, no, I'm okay. And their past life work said, you came out of traumatic past lives. You need a life of just okay, of rest and
Mm.
recuperation. And that's
Mhm.
just what their soul needed, but they were content. That discontent is a
Mm.
feeling like you're getting ready for something else, like a bird getting ready to molt.
Mm,
And
I like that because it really puts
mhm,
that it really puts a different perspective on that feeling of being
mhm,
stuck. It um, I could see helping somebody to recognize that when you feel stuck like that, when you feel like you don't have direction, you don't know where you're going, um, kind of bringing some light into them and saying, "Wow, that's really exciting." That means you're preparing
right.
for something to happen. I like that. That
Eh,
instills belief and some hope that uh, this is gonna be a good thing.
Often, one of the problems that hits at that point is they're aware that everybody else is comfortable with them in that role,
Hmm.
and that if they change, they're gonna scare everybody. They
Mm.
like them right where they are. Everybody's built their life around them as they are. And
Mm.
it may be important to give people around them reassurance. No, I can change. I can go back to school and still love you.
Mm.
I can change jobs and still be aware that I have to take care of the family. I love you. And if I stay here, this will not get better. It will get worse. But I'm
Mm.
feeling a call to do this. It, and I will give you all kinds of support for working with me on that.
Mm.
And give people a
I-
lot of positive feedback if they can help you imagine what else you could be.
right. And simply put, change is uncomfortable. Change can be scary, just not only for the person, but for the people around them in their circle. Yeah. So, I you have said to me that it's astrology. It helps us to move with the rhythms of life, which that's what I titled this show today, "Moving with the Rhythms of Life," because I really like that
Mm,
concept, that statement. That our lives do have rhythms, and um, sometimes you already mentioned, people who look externally for things to fill up voids that are actually within themselves. And that doesn't necessarily work because then you're continually looking for more and more and more external things to fill up voids. But I think it also, when we think of moving with the rhythms of life, um, that it's similar when we think about trying to have control
mhm,
over our lives.
mhm.
Again, back in the day, I was this anxiety ridden person who was quite compulsive. I would have a lot of compulsive behaviors, and I knew that this was an irrational thought, but if I tapped that doorknob 3 times before I left the house, the house wouldn't burn down while I was gone. I would control the universe and make sure that didn't happen. So I mean, that was all about me trying to control and to ensure that bad things didn't happen. And it was largely trauma based. My fears came from traumas, and I recognize that now. And I've worked on, healing those traumas and whatnot. And let's see, I do have one little compulsion where I count something in the morning one time, but it's so much like less, and it's not necessarily because I believe I'll control the universe. Maybe it's just a habit
Those
now
are
because I did it for so
and
many
those
years.
can be good calming skills.
Yeah.
Working our rituals, the rituals that we have to calm ourselves and align are not necessarily bad. The, tapping your doorknob 3 times, maybe also a time when you go like, "Did I turn off the stove? Did I do this?
Mm,
Have I turned that?" And it gives you a moment to stop and collect. And if
mm,
any information that was unsafe had happened would probably come to you like, "Oh," and go fix it then. So kind of
mm.
also trusting ourselves that that
Okay.
habit may not be that's not gonna save the house, but maybe it helps you save the house by catching up with yourself, checking, taking a deep breath.
Mm,
And I often say one of my mottos is pray, don't worry, you know, or
mm,
don't worry, pray. Instead of, to bless the house as you leave it rather
mm,
than, and that gives you a moment to check in. I bless this house. May it be safe when I return. Did I turn off the stove? Like it still gives you a moment to connect and make sure that go run through your safety transit. And I've learned not
right.
to disregard people's worries and concerns because sometimes they come
Mm,
through in the strangest ways, or they find out later in life why they were so worried. But I think
mm,
of the story of a man who built one of the first fireproof houses. He was paranoid about fire all his life. And
mm,
he built it, it had fireproof curtains, fiberglass curtains, it was brick, nothing in it was going to burn. And then he went to Copacabana for New Year's Eve the night it burnt down
mm.
and died in a fire. That
Oh.
somewhere in him knew that there was gonna be a fire in his life,
Mm,
and it just didn't happen. Like, we can't always control that. Usually, that's not true. Usually, we realize that that's a form of anxiety, and anxiety is feeling out of control. How do you take care of what you can and work with spirit for the rest, that you're always
mhm.
co-creating your life. You do your end and you ask the universe to do its end, you know.
Nice. Always
And,
co-creating your life. I love that.
and you're responsible for that. But I think that those habits do help us are calming. They're that if we don't take them as magical thinking, like if I don't, then bad things will happen. But
Mhm,
trust my soul that it likes to do this to feel calm when I leave the house. Let me use
mm.
that moment to run my checklist, and I think that
Right, and
helps.
maybe it's kind of like in the world of mental health therapists, we're required. This is my least favorite thing, but we're required to diagnose people so that we can justify working with them, and then bill insurance companies, make them happy. Um, so I always think of like take anxiety when that line where like what is normal amount of anxiety, what crosses the line and into the world of unhealthy anxiety, and it really is a a discussion that you have with your client about how much does this interfere with your
Mhm,
life.
mhm,
How much does it is it not helpful for you, and how much does it interfere with? And that's kind of when how you measure whether or not it's dysfunctional or a disorder. So maybe it's kind of the same thing like you're talking about.
mhm. I think that you're right. I think of, my father was full on OCD, but some of it was natural. He would, as a super mathematician, he did all these things. but it for him, is it conscientious personality? Is it like, there's a non-pathological version of that, the highly conscientious personality or OCD. And the
Mm,
person who wrote a great book who helped write the diagnostic manual also wrote a book on personality types. So
mm,
there's OCD or highly conscientious. What's the difference? Is it working for
mm.
you? Then it's the it's not working for you, then it's the disorder, and it's very simple, like,
Uh-huh.
is it something that you roll with, or is it,
Mhm,
and that takes some trust in yourself in the in the process. And I would say, I think also with astrology that we find people tend to calm down when they're working with their chart, with who they are, with, where they're
mm,
feeling called to grow this lifetime, and their difficult habits become more difficult if they're resisting who they are, and that can feel like I'm out
mm,
of control of other parts of my life. Let me control this one thing, or um,
mhm. Right. And I, again, completely agree with what you're saying that when we receive a reading, a chart reading, it has helped me so much to create a reassurance even for myself because it kind of lays out in front of you why things have happened the way
mm,
they have. And I know recently I was talking to another one of my friends who does astrology, and I was reflecting back on 2024. And I had made a statement like, oh, I had thought that I would have seen more growth in this area of my life. And I, I kind of, I wasn't saying I was disappointed. I was just like, oh, I thought this would go, someplace bigger than what it has at this point. And, when she was looking at the chart, she said, oh, well, last year was a period of revisiting and resolving traumas for you. And when she said that, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what it felt like, and
it
I
is.
had, yeah, and I had been feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm still resolving these traumas. And
Thank
I,
goodness we don't have to do it all at once, right?
yes, thank
And it
goodness.
comes around, and it comes around that spiral,
Uh-huh.
that we're
Mm,
back on that place on the spiral. We do a chunk of work, and then things come around and set that place off again, and another chance to take the healing. We're not stuck doing that one piece over and over and over again till we get it
mm,
right. Trust that evolution. You find that every time you come back, you've got a bigger toolbox to deal with it.
mm. Yes. And again, just having that awareness, that brought to my awareness, then I could reflect back on 2024 and say, oh, wow, yeah, I did do this and I saw this. And that I saw it as a lot, actually, as a lot of really good growth once I was able to change my perspective and my awareness around it. And that's what that chart reading helped me with.
Beautiful.
So, what
Beautiful.
happens when you go against the rhythm of life?
Well, there's two words I like to use. One is disaster, and these really are where they came from. Dis means against, aster is stars. If you're trying to do your taxes when all the chart is telling you to go out and play and making, it's like you're thinking of a billion things and it's time to paint, then it can feel like a disaster. I have to go do my taxes. If you wait until the moon signs and the planets are a little less overactivated and you can settle down a bit more, then you are constellating. You are with
Mm,
stellation, the stars. So how do you constellate versus have a disaster? I think of
mm,
to every time there is a season, and to work with the aspects. Uh, this next week is Martin Luther King Day and the inauguration. The week after that, the 5 days after that, are really tricky. I wouldn't want to be in politics next week
Can I
for
stop
any of
you
us.
right there?
Yep. Hmm.
Can I stop you right there? Um,
I won't go
So
into politics. Go ahead. Yes,
no, no,
I
no. I wasn't trying to stop you from going into politics. We actually have to take a break, and I want to, after this
okay,
break, really look at those things that you were just entering into. Like
okay,
our world and whatnot. So I didn't want to interrupt that rhythm once it
okay.
starts. So
Wonderful.
yeah, let's take a brief commercial break. You're watching Talks with Tracy on Bold Brave Television Network. I'm here with beautiful Heather Rowan Robbins. And when we come back, we will continue our talk about how about the talk about the rhythm of the world
Right.
that we're in right
Wonderful.
now. All right, so stay tuned. We'll be right back.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to easysense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's easysense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Welcome back to Talks with Tracy, coming to you live on Bold Brave Television Network. I have the pleasure and the honor of being here with the amazing Heather Rowan Robbins today, and we have been talking about moving with the rhythms of life and how choice-based astrology can kind of help us guide our lives and give us meaning and purpose and understanding, awareness for sure. That's what it's helped me with. So, Heather, before the break, you were just kind of launching into a discussion about the rhythms of the world right now. And you had mentioned things to come next week. Can you kind of pick up there where we left
Well,
off?
there's some difficult transits coming up early next week that could be transformative, and we can pray that they could be good transformations, but they could be rather difficult. And that's both big picture politics, which we can imagine, but also personally. It's a good week to not go see your ex.
Mm.
It's a good, or to get into an argument that unnecessarily, walk yourself away rather than blow up next week because it can get, we have determination, we have an ability to stick to things, and it can be a transformative week, but it could also be a real power struggle. As the sun conjuncts Pluto under a Scorpio moon, we can do deep work. There's lots of things you can use it for. I would just say that it's one of those weeks where you look at it and go like, maybe not the time to try to negotiate what I need. Like I wouldn't necessarily say next week's a good time to ask for a raise. The following week
Mm.
may, but next week is more like realizing that you need that raise, and the next week, how do I go about it? But I would say that kind of coming to understand yourself, being empowered yourself, not giving your power away is going to be an important dynamic next week. Doing
Mm.
the deep work, but think of it, if you feel depressed, because that can be one of the ways that these transits talk to us. Not again, it's not don't believe that story that our brain is telling us, but go, what am I really hungry for? What do I really need here? What would really be helpful here? And focus on that rather than the story that our brains can tell us if we're unhappy. And that unhappiness may point to something that needs changing. One of the
Mm.
things that you were talking about working with the process, that if
Mm.
suddenly something is not right, and it doesn't mean that it was wrong before. It may mean you see when you look at a chart and you watch the transits, that's where the planets are today playing on your chart. You go, it's like, well, that era is done. A new era is beginning with new demands. Like, this is time for you to start exploring this side of you. This was not wrong. Now, usually, what we have to watch out for is when we feel that discontent, throwing the baby out with the bathwater. If a relationship was really working and now you're at a place where it's feeling like this is not working for me anymore, I realize there's an abusive pattern, or I realize I'm feeling stuck in this relationship. You don't necessarily have to leave it. You have to look carefully at what parts are now like you've outgrown. Think of it as
Mm.
outgrowing it. You've outgrown a place, but that doesn't mean that relationship can't grow with you. Give it the chance to do that by like,
Mm.
I need more room to do this. Are you willing to work with me on that? I think we need to go into therapy as a coach, to make this a better relationship. Are you willing to do that? Notice what it is. Otherwise, you just take the same thing into the next relationship. So it's
Mm.
important to kind of not overgeneralize when the discontent hits. When the discontent is usually a sign that you're ready for a new chapter. How can we feed that new
Mm.
chapter? Be careful to not to let go of what's supporting you in order to move on.
Right. So the discontent is kind of that, along the same lines as that stuck feeling, like
Mhm.
not moving forward
Right,
feeling. Hmm.
right. And to get specific about what parts of you are now well fed and what parts of you are now hungry. And your
Okay.
soul is saying, please use these muscles.
Mm.
I think of that often our soul wants rounding out. If we've done one thing over and over and over again, we may need to go something else entirely. But the idea is to use all of our muscles, to use them in a balanced way. But sometimes, we can see that I mentioned a little bit about what's happening next week. Anybody,
Mm-hmm.
I have a free article out called Star Codes. You can Google it. You can find it in We Moon Calendar, The Edge magazine. You can find it on my website, or on medium.com. The links on my website, or on my Facebook page, Heather Owen
Oh,
Robbins
okay.
dash Star Codes. And it will give you a little bit of the map of the day and the week,
Mm.
which I want to pass on and help people with. And it's from that work that came my book, and the the oracle cards that I also, you can see the picture behind me, that I have used to help people both understand astrology and to use for their own divination.
Mm.
But the next few years, it's already started last year as Pluto went back and forth and has now moved into Aquarius, left a sign. Pluto takes 248 years around the zodiac, so it moves very slowly. And it's moving now into a new sign, asking new things of us. It's like a new chapter, or, when we've driven out of one county and we're in another. um, where Neptune and Saturn both, Neptune takes 164 years, Saturn 30 roughly, um, and they're both leaving Pisces and moving into Aries this spring. It's much more action oriented, much less compassion oriented, much more just get it done. It can bring up military energy. Last time Neptune went into Aries was the first day of the American Civil War. So I'm hoping that we can use it. It's more about
Mm.
demanding action than it does demand war, but it wants action,
Mm.
and which I think can be really helpful dealing with climate change. So, like, finally, we're ready to take action on working together to solve problems. It can be really helpful towards that. But feel that
Okay.
and then it's gonna go back into Pisces and then go into Aries. Uranus is leaving Taurus and going into Gemini this year. We need to talk more, and we'll see what happens. So there's a lot of major astrological agenda shifts that, we are completing a pattern, that, uh, right over Christmas, over Thanksgiving and Christmas, and our last voting day was a review of what we've been going through, and now we're heading into new astrological requests and demands, and so a lot of us may start to feel it and feel like, okay, I am ready for something new. What is it? And I would just say, really look at where we're feeling called, what we're hungry for, where do we feel like, oh, I've been trained, this trauma taught me a talent in order to survive that. Now, how can I use that talent to help other people? Like,
Mhm.
what is it that we have earned so far that we're ready to share, and how can we share it?
Right, and that's really about we have to do a certain amount of listening to our intuition, and
Mhm.
that I think can kind of be confusing for people. But really, all that is about is um, having an awareness when you're drawn to something, like, oh, this really, this looks really cool, or you're drawn to a person, or you have, like, you're drawn to an interest. Just being aware of those things that you're drawn to, because a lot of times we don't pay attention to our own intuitions and what we're really compelled towards or drawn to, and then taking the steps to move towards that, whether it's familiar to you or not, kind of seeing that as a sign. Oh, I guess I'm meant to do this. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it will be an interesting process. I would also say that sometimes after a tough again, like last year for you, you
Mm-hmm.
had all these plans on what you should do for your work,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but life asked you to show up elsewhere. And you
Mm-hmm.
had, we have to really work with spirit and with the cosmos. Where am I needed now? I thought I was doing this, but that looks
Mm-hmm.
like it's not, that doesn't mean it's not true, and it's I won't do it, but first I need to honor this, that my soul's
Mm-hmm.
growth and the karma that I'm involved with everybody else around me, our patterns together need this work done first. And that's often
Right.
as if it clears. What I often see is that people do really well right after a Pluto transit. And it's almost like they burn through karma, or they reorganize something, or they find a new strength, and then they take that and then run with it. So
Mm-hmm.
it's again trusting that process. I remember when I was I went through the interfaith seminary in the it's just called the interfaith seminary, the seminary in New York. I went right after 9/11 when I moved there, and I just needed more tools to help my clients because we were dealing with
Mm-hmm.
so much in New York. And um, I worked uh, afterwards as the registrar for the school, and I found so many people had to put these plans on hold, had to defer entrance because they would say, and they were usually in their 30s, 40s, or 50s. um, I want to go back to school. I want to go to this seminary. I want to become an interfaith minister. And then crap would hit the fan. Their life would just boom. And then after they dealt with the dying parent or the child in crisis or
Mm-hmm.
whatever happened, then they would came in and were even better at what they were doing. And they really invested themselves in that role and used that education. B But in the process, what it felt like, they say to the universe, "Okay, I'd like to help. I'm here. I'm showing up. How can I help?" And the it's like, "Can I will this help?" And the universe says, "No, first I need you to do this. This is an
Mm-hmm.
emergency. Handle this process." But in that's part of their training. If they trust that their intention was, "I'm heading to become an interfaith minister," or "I'm heading to be a good soul," and the universe says, "Here, I'm gonna give you a chest." that may be part of their education. I mean, it's not why it's
Mm.
happening. I think there's always intersecting reasons for the events in our life, but they can use it as part of their education and part of their training for what they need to do next.
Right. Yeah. And so, great points. And as I did review and look back at 2024, and it was brought to my awareness that I was processing trauma, I found that there was just a lot of work that was being done within myself around grief and those trauma experiences around people I've lost in circumstances. And when I was visiting with you the other day, you made a great point that um, we can also do our work by supporting the people around us and our loved ones and whatnot through a process that we're going through. So through a grief process. And you had pointed out that with all the losses that my family had suffered towards the end of the year, last year, that was me, I believe your words were walking them through grief.
Hmm.
And that was a part of my process as
Yes,
well.
very
So I
much.
thought that was a really nice point. And then you also brought up to me how we can, even like within the world, things happening within the world can also prompt us to walk through our own healing experiences. I believe you used the example of the year that Princess Diana died was the same year that Mother Teresa died. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And can you just
I
say
was talking about
say
I think when Princess Diana died, so many people were just grieving. And I remember several people said, well, at least it wasn't Mother Teresa, and then she died. And that, but there was astrological symbols about needing to grieve,
Mm,
and that we might that there was just tapping into, you know, sometimes what they call state dependent memories, that when you're sad about one thing, you remember everything you've ever been sad about. But
mm,
if you've got any unfinished pockets of grief that never got a chance to come out, you'll often see this when we lose an animal, that
mm,
that's where we've invested our tenderness. People say, well, it's just a dog. No, it was the
mm,
dog that was the holder of our tenderness and of our childhood self and our inner child. And when we're sad about this, we remember every bit of sadness we've ever experienced that there wasn't time to grieve at the time. So it's a healing
mm,
process. It kind of it opens up the floodgates, but it can feel overwhelming. And
mm,
I think that because people don't put up guards against loving their animals usually.
mm,
And that with Princess Diana and Mother Teresa, there was astrological things that were suggesting that we could tap into and heal our grief. Uh, and then these people died, and the grief was, you'll notice that some celebrities, when they die, the grief is just horrific around the
mm,
world. Other times it's like, oh, that's too bad. I'm going to miss them. It's if it's
mm,
tying into the flow, it gives us it acts like an archetypal, symbolic chance to grieve together about something.
mm,
So it
mhm.
and really process that process.
Right, right. Thank you for that. So, could you tell me again? You mentioned next week, and you did talk about uh, next week and the rhythms of the universe. But with the inauguration coming and the things that next week holds, can you talk a little bit just about that?
Want to be very careful because it's intuition
Mhm.
is hard when you have a strong opinion, when you have what we call
Mm,
it, that we move into our static zone of our hopes and our
mm.
fears. And I
Okay.
have
Yep.
a lot of fear around the inauguration,
Mm,
and a lot of worry.
okay.
And
I
so
like your
I can't,
awareness.
right, so that I can't say that I can see it clearly.
Okay.
But looking like, because it's being born then, this next presidency.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also Martin Luther King Day. It's an interesting
Mm,
paradox. And that
mm,
remembering the gift of being willing to give so much of yourself, to be judged by the content of our character,
mm,
to really see the beauty of transformation on a
mm,
sense is a really important part of the process because we will be dealing with a very transformed, like this, that Sun Pluto conjunction says transformation. And then the next day, Tuesday, the moon goes into Scorpio. And if you're feeling vindictive, that's the time when your vindictive side comes up. So
mm,
I would say it looks like the day itself has some pretty moments, moon and Libra, but there is really questions on what does grief do for us, because the Sun Pluto conjunction, one side of that is power dynamics, one side of it is grief. So the
mm,
grief of the aftermath of the fires in LA, the grief of
mm,
the aftermath, if and whether or not they can make the peace hold in the Mideast,
mm,
will be strong. The power dynamics of the Sun Pluto conjunction. It doesn't tell us, it's always up to us how we use it. And it's up to the
mhm,
new administration how they use it. But it will bring up the question of what is the right use of power? What is oppression and what is empowerment? What
mhm,
does need to be cut out? What, when you do that, you're can you keep your heart and compassion open and work for the good of all? In the process of these reorganization of power dynamics. But I think we can
mm,
really expect the first week to see some retribution and some real effort to shift the power dynamics in the country. What that's going to look like is up to the people involved. That's not
mhm,
pre-inclined. One of the things that
mhm,
our country has recently gone through its first Pluto return, because that's how slow Pluto is. What's
mm,
happening now is we are heading into the Pluto return of the American Constitution. And I think that that can give us a vision statement to keep, to return to invest in. And, the Pluto transit says, and rebirth, death and rebirth. How can we rebirth the American Constitution, our work with it, our belief in it, and use that as a foundation to keep any excess from either side and keep us on,
mm.
and not say, oh, what they meant then was, but what did they say? What they said is really a powerful vision statement.
Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you for that. That makes perfect sense. So, I mean, there's so many ways to use this information out there in the universe. There, from a worldly perspective to a very personal um, reading of your chart. And I know when you get a reading of your chart, it's most helpful to you for you to be given a birth date, a place of birth, a time of
Hmm.
birth, and I have learned from you that with that information, you can just pinpoint what exactly was happening in the universe at the time of your birth and then go
Hmm.
from there. It's the
Hmm.
coolest thing. Yeah, it's
It
so
is. I
amazing.
love my work. Um,
Yes.
and it is fascinating. And again, it says, that it talks to me about the interrelatedness of the whole universe. That
Mm,
there's both a combination of free will and these big universal patterns that we're working with. And how do we work with
beautiful.
it's our free will to work with the universal patterns, but we are connected,
Mhm.
infinitely connected, which feels lovely.
Absolutely. Yes, and going with those rhythms of life. So please, we're almost out of time today. Can you please tell us how we can get a hold of you for your
Yes,
incredible
and you
services?
can book online if you want to. Rowan Robbins, RoanRobbins.com is my website.
Okay.
And you can Google star codes to find out my article, and it's on several different
Mm.
sources, and that I can help you in any way that I can. And I love taking astrological questions.
Oh,
And
nice.
so if people just have a question about astrology, I'll do my best to answer it. So. That I'm also
Perfect.
available
Oh,
by email at starcodes-heartcodes at gmail.com.
perfect. Thank you so much for that. And thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it. And also thank you out there for everybody who takes the time to watch the show. Again, I so appreciate every single one of you sending love. If you would like to get a hold of me, I can be reached via email at info@tcholistic.healing.com. And I have a website, the same name, TC Holistic Healing, and that you can easily gain access to my YouTube channel and my social media sites and all of that good stuff. I'd love to hear from you, even if you just have some suggestions about show topics and things you'd like to hear me talk with my incredible guests about, or just talk about. Please hit me up, get a hold of me. So next week I'm going to continue on this mission that I'm on, this quest for filling up our toolbox. And I'm going to have another returning guest, Lisa Adams, who's a psychic medium. She dabbles in astrology as well. She'll be joining us, and I'll be posing some of these questions to her. So please join me for that. You've been watching Talks with Tracy. Thank you so much, Heather.
Thank
Uh,
you.
yes,
Okay.
yes. And yeah, so please join us next week.
This has been Talks with Tracy. Join us each week as Tracy and her guests will come together and realize that underneath it all, we are all the same and never alone. So join us each week and let Talks with Tracy be your safe place to land in your healing journey. Right here, Thursdays, 11 a.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network.